So here's the thing, right? Is that since we're at the new shop, we get to have food together. This is Toppers. If you've never had Toppers, you're missing out on life. If you're missing out on life, it means you've never been up to the Midwest where you got yourself some Toppers, because that is the second best thing I've experienced in my life in the past week. You guys wanted us to talk about how, like, last time we were talking about things that ruined your car, a lot of people got angry, and we thought, you know what we could do? Just in the spirit of 2019, making everybody feel wholesome about themselves, nice, maybe, you know, it's a happy time. We're gonna give you some tips on like things that help your car, and that if you're looking for things to do to your car, that you should start with this list. By the way, I'm Alex from Fitment Industries. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell button, and if you just wanna drop a comment saying, you know, like RIP Dakota, I wouldn't be mad about it. I mean, just letting you know, Mario Kart champion, #1. Right here. All right, so let's just get it right out of the way. The first thing that you're gonna wanna do is go get good tires. Please, por favor. Because they don't have to be Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, they just have to be made out of like a good soft compound and have a good tread. Your tires are where the power from your car either end up making it or breaking it. So if you have a 1,000 horsepower car, but you have tires, no one's gonna be really impressed because you're just not going to go anywhere, even though burnouts are probably one of the most exciting things you could possibly do with a car that require very little skill. You're gonna sit there and spin, and then you're gonna be sad because you're just not gonna be able to have a good time and actually go fast when you wanna race somebody else. But if you get good tires, you can actually hook and you can get traction. You're probably gonna end up being like the Johnny Tran guy in the Fast and Furious where he yells "Too soon, Junior" before blowing past another car at like 50 miles an hour because you think, I mean, we just all think our slow cars are fast. It's just a good thing to buy. It's a no-brainer. It's something that a lot of people don't really think about because they just never end up putting money into the tires. They put a lot of money into their wheels. Something else that you're probably not thinking about is brakes, and it's probably one of the best things to pay attention to right at the start of doing something to your car, because upgrading your brake pads is an absolutely great idea. Brakes are super important, and they're probably one of the best things you could possibly have for your car right next to your tires, because when you're slamming on your brakes, that's when you're gonna notice that brakes are either good or not good. But what you'll end up actually realizing is that when you have good brakes, a lot of times you're gonna enjoy driving your car smarter when you're going through any sort of time attack, autocross, or anything in between, because you're actually gonna be relying on the brakes more because they're gonna be behaving better to how you drive, because they're gonna have less deterioration and they're not gonna die as fast, they're not gonna get as hot. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of your brakes. So as you increase the quality of your brakes, you'll actually find yourself enjoying your car more because you're gonna feel like you control it more instead of the car actually just feeling like it's out of your control because it's, you know, 4,500 pounds and you've got 15-year-old brakes on it. Now, we're not gonna get into like the logistics and difficulty of all the different types of brakes, but you can go out and get different styles of brakes depending on how you drive, depending on if you track it all the time or whether you daily drive it. But at the end of the day, you should probably just upgrade your brakes and pretty much anything else that's associated with it, like your brake lines. I mean, switching from rubber to stainless are gonna be a great thing to do, so when pressure builds up, they don't expand outwards, which happens in rubber lines. A lot of times with older cars, you're gonna notice that a lot of the stuff that are in or around your suspension components are probably gonna need to be replaced, and that's why we usually recommend the bushings, the brakes, the brake lines, and everything in between. Another thing that I would recommend would be a cold air intake or just an open intake as a get-go. Now, disclaimer.
A lot of new cars have an intake system, performance intake system, that's better than a lot of people's aftermarket applications.
There's gonna be very few applications, especially in the higher echelon of motorsport cars like M Series and things like that, that are gonna be able to make an intake better. However, they usually sound better when you take them out of the big old hot box that you call your intake, which is, you know, pretty typical. But if you want to go into getting a cold air intake or just an intake in general, we would recommend it. As long as it's routed correctly, you'll actually get to a little bit of an increase in overall horsepower if you have something that's extremely restricting. But don't take your $80,000 BMW and go cut it up or take the box off and expect to get a ton of power, because BMW is actually pretty good at what they do. Now, another good tip that we would recommend in terms of things that help your car would be actually a tune. Now, you guys might be like, Alex, that is a very, very simple thing to say, and yes, it is. But here's the thing. A lot of times people have a tendency to go out there and they get like a WRX. And they're like, I'm going to put this big intake on it so it sucks it all in, like, you know, like that. And then they have this big old, like, you ever see the exhaust? It's like yay big, and then it gargles and it backfires and it makes all the noise, and then turns out they're actually making less horsepower than they were before because the car cannot figure out what going on with the intake and the exhaust and the downpipe and all the other stuff that they ended up doing to the car. That has to do with the fact that it was never tuned, so it doesn't know what to do with the additional modifications. And a lot of people go cheap and they don't tune their car. They just do a couple of the modifications, and this goes across the platform, not just Subarus, but a lot of different cars where you need to tune the car if you end up modifying anything that has to do with anything with an air-fuel ratio, intake, exhaust, or anything that changes the car to a point out of OE spec that the computer actually can't adjust for. And a lot of times you'll see that happen in a much narrower field of view with the newer cars than the older ones. If you have an older one, then you can pretty much do whatever you want. You could take a 350 and pretty much run motor oil through it with no gasoline, and it's probably still gonna run. But with a lot of the newer stuff and a lot of Subarus and a lot of tuner cars in general, anything out of spec is gonna be a massive pain in the ass. One of the things that we usually recommend, and this goes more towards the people that have built cars in the past or at least modified them, is don't do all of your modifications at once. If you do it all at once, a lot of times you're gonna have issues. In fact, even when you install parts one at a time, you're probably gonna have issues. But it makes it much more difficult for you to source the problem if you go and install everything at once. If you do it in steps, then at least you can actually trace back to the actual problem that you had, and you can test out whatever modification that you added to the car. Now, this isn't necessarily a part or a product that's gonna help your car, but it is gonna help the overall, you actually understand what you're doing part of the car. Because a lot of times if you don't understand what you're doing and you just jump in, it's not usually the best thing to end up standing there as the car's not running because you decided to go put $7,000 into it. You did it all in your garage. There's a car show in 4 days. You read one forum page and watched one YouTube video, and now all of a sudden you can't figure out why your car isn't sparking. We just recommend do it in steps. And even though everybody in the world wants everybody to build a car like overnight, it seems like these days, take your time, because taking your time is gonna be the difference between your car running the way that it wants to and the way that it actually needs to. And our last tip that we would probably have for you is suspension. Not just suspension in general, but as you're adding on coilovers, lowering springs, polyurethane bushings, whether you're adjusting your camber or toe or anything like that, but actually dialing in your suspension can be a modification that improves your car in and of itself. There's so many people that throw in coilovers and then never get in alignment, and it's actually probably the worst things that you could do to the driving quality of your car. The whole point of coilovers is to be able to adjust your damping, your compression, your rebound, your preload, all of that sort of stuff, your drive height, everything in between. And if you don't actually use any of that stuff, a lot of times you're not going to get the full experience out of your coilovers. And if you actually end up diving into that, or as I like to say, delving into that sort of information, you can actually find out a lot. And you can dial in your car to a point where a lot of times it will outperform, even if it's a slower car, many cars that have more horsepower than yours, because your suspension is dialed in where theirs more than likely is not. And you can ask pretty much any autocross or time attack guy that when you dial in your suspension to a T, it actually behaves like an entirely different car. So if you're looking to learn more about suspension and the dynamics of it all, you can probably check out some of our videos that are that way. Yeah, definitely that way. So that's everything that we have for mods that would help your car, AKA not screw it up, AKA not ruin your car, because last time we did a video about ruining cars, people got really angry, mostly people that got mad about Plessy Dip, because Dip Your Car got mad, and it was just a weird thing. I didn't know it was such a big deal. I apologize, I didn't. Whatever, jeez. Okay, I'm Alex from Fitment Industries. We'll see you later, peace.